Hi, and thank you for joining me for Lesson 5.5a on standard form. The goal today is to be able to write a linear equation in standard form. Be sure that you've watched the 5.5 introduction video before watching this lesson video. And if you've already watched that video, then you are ready for this lesson today. Let's begin. When an equation is properly written in standard form, the a, the b, and the c are all integers. The a coefficient in the front needs to be a positive integer. These are things to keep in mind when you're writing equations in standard form. Let's begin on example number 1. Today in this video, we will be doing examples 1 through 4. And then we'll have a summary at the end. Okay, go ahead and write down example number 1. You'll notice that this equation is in point-slope form, but we're going to convert it, rewrite it in standard form so that it looks just like this. To begin, we're going to distribute the 3 on the right-hand side because we don't want any parentheses in our equation. Then you'll notice when an equation is in standard form, the x and the y terms are both on the left of the equal sign and the constant's on the right. So I'm going to move this -8 over to the right-hand side because I don't want it on the left. Now you're going to notice that the equation is in slope-intercept form. Again, the x and the y and their coefficients are on the left. So I need this 3x to be over on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to subtract it, and that's going to move it over there. Cancels here, and I bring down the 2. And then over here on this side, I have a -3x and a positive y. I'm going to put them in the same order that we see here in standard form, the x first and then the y. So -3x and then positive y. I'm almost done. There's one problem that I see. The a coefficient right here, the -3 here, it's negative, and I can't have a negative a value. This has to be positive in the front. So I'm going to need to make that -3 into a positive 3, but I have to keep the equation balanced. So if I do the same thing to both sides of the equation, I know I'm going to keep the equation in balance. In order to get this -3 to be a positive 3, I could multiply it by -1. Because -3 times -1 will make it its opposite, and it'll be positive 3. So I'm going to multiply everything on the left side of the equation by -1, but I also have to do that to the right side also, multiply by -1. Don't forget that this -1 is being multiplied by both the x term and the y term. So now everything in this entire equation is going to change to its opposite when you multiply by -1. -1 times -3 will make this a 3x. -1 times positive y will make it a -1y. And then over here on the right-hand side, this will be a -2. Then I have my equation in standard form. The a term is 3, the b term is -1, and the c term is -2. Perfect. Let's look at example number 2. Go ahead and write it down. You'll notice that this equation is in slope-intercept form. However, do you see that there's decimals in it? And we can't have decimals, we need to have integers when we're writing an equation in standard form. So let's begin. I've got the x term on the right-hand side, and I need to move that over to the left-hand side because both the x and the y have to be on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So I'm just going to do the opposite here. I'm going to add 0.4x, add 4/10 x to both sides. The decimal's a little high. And then over here, I'm going to have a positive 0.4x and a positive y. Okay. Now we can't have decimals. We have to have integers. So again, just like I did before, I need to multiply both sides of the equation, of course, by some number that's going to change the 4/10 and the 1 2/10 into whole numbers. Okay, so you guys know that when you multiply by 10, it simply moves the decimal point in a number one place to the right, correct? And so if I need to change both of these into whole numbers, if the decimal point were moved one place to the right, they would both be whole numbers. This would be 4 and this would be 12. So that's the easiest way to get rid of a decimal, is to multiply it by 10 and move the decimal point one place to the right. Now, of course, if I had like the decimal point 2.25 and I want to make that a whole number, I'd have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, meaning I'd have to multiply by 100. Okay, so you're simply multiplying by a power of 10. If you want to move the decimal point one place, multiply by 10. You want to move it 2 places, multiply everything by 100. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to multiply everything by 10 on both sides of the equal sign. Now keep in mind, you're multiplying the x term and the y term by 10, everything by 10. That's often forgot to multiply your y term as well, so don't forget that. Okay, so multiplying by 10, that's going to move this decimal point one place to the right, and you're going to get 4x. And then if I multiply the y by 10, I get 10y. And then when I multiply 1.2 by 10, it moves the decimal point and I get 12. Okay, sometimes what will happen though when you multiply everything by a number as big as 10 is that you're going to have to simplify your answer. If you notice here, both sides of this equation, all the terms here in this entire equation are all divisible by 2. So I'm going to now have to take both sides of the equation and divide everything by 2 to simplify this. Okay, as long as I'm doing the same thing to both sides, I'm maintaining balance in the equation. So I'm really going to get 2x plus 5y equals 6. So that will be my standard form equation. Notice my a, b, and c are all integers, and the first term is positive. Had I multiplied everything by 5, I wouldn't have needed to simplify here, but it's much less likely that you're going to notice multiplying by 5, will get you whole numbers. It's just easiest when you have decimals to multiply by 10 or 100. And then, of course, simplify if you can. And sometimes you can. Okay, perfect. All right, so we've changed a slope-intercept form equation into standard form. And we got rid of those decimals. All right. Time for number 3. This one is also in slope-intercept form. Notice that we're going to have a problem here because we're going to have a fraction. And we can't have a fraction when we need integers. Okay, so let's begin this one. Okay, remember the x and the y term have to be on the left side of the equal sign. The y is already there, so I got to move the x. So I'm just simply going to subtract 3/5 x. That cancels it here. And move it over here. This is a positive y. I want to put them in the same order that I see here. So I'm going to put the negative 3/5 x first, and then the positive y, and then I'm going to drop down the 4. Okay, now if we could have fractions and negatives in our answer, we'd be done, but we can't. So we've got to clear 2 things. We've got to clear this negative and we got to clear this fraction. Well, I showed you how to clear the negative earlier. So let's just do that first. Can't have a negative here, so remember how we do that? We multiply everything by -1. Okay, so everything over here on this side by -1, everything over here by -1. Remember, that's, you're kind of thinking I'm distributing here because both terms, the x term and the y term, have to be multiplied by -1. So I'm simply just changing everything into its opposite. This is going to become positive 3/5 x, this is negative y, and then this over here is -4. Okay. Now we're ready to undo this fraction. We want this fraction to become a whole number. And the easiest way to do this is to multiply by the denominator. Let me show you how that works here. If I have the number 3/5 and I multiply by its denominator, which is 5 over 1, right? The denominator is 5. You see what happens here? If I multiply these, the 5s cancel and I end up getting just 3, a whole number. Okay, so I want to multiply by the denominator 5, but that means I have to multiply everything on both sides by 5. This has to get multiplied by 5. This has to get multiplied by 5. Everything. So you see what happens over here? The 5's will cancel, and I'll end up with 3x. Then I'm multiplying this by -5, so I get, or by 5, so -5y instead of -1y, and then -4 times 5 is -20. I'm going to check to see if I have to simplify. There's nothing that I can divide all three terms by, so I am done. So I've got 3x minus 5y equals -20. The a is 3, the b is -5, the c is -20. Okay, so we did two things in this one. We multiplied by a -1 and we multiplied by 5. Do you notice that you could have cleared the negative and the fraction all in one simple step of multiplying by -5? You could do that if you notice that. That's a quicker way. It's just one step instead of two. Okay, last example, and then we're going to move to our summary, which is important. You want to be sure you stay for the summary. Okay, in this example, we've got point slope form. So let's convert it. We want to first start by distributing. Get rid of those parentheses. I have -4/3 times 9, which I know is going to be negative, and you may want to take it to the side, 4/3 times 9/1, because that might be something you're not able to do in your head. Divide by 3, and I end up with 12. Okay, so that's 12. Okay, I want the constants over on the right, like you see here in standard form, so I'm going to add the 2 to both sides. And then you'll see that what ends up happening is you're getting this equation into slope-intercept form. Essentially, that's what you're doing here. Okay, so I've got to get the x term over on the left-hand side, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is adding 4/3 x. That cancels, leaving you a -10 on this side. Almost running out of room here. So we got 4/3 x plus y equals 10. Okay, we're so close. You see the problem here? We've got a fraction. Do you remember how to make the fraction into a whole number? Yep, multiply by the denominator. So multiply by 3 here, 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 everywhere. Okay, so this is 3/1. So 3's cancel, leaving me 4x plus, now multiply this by 3, 3y, and then here I've got -30. Perfect, and there we go. You'll notice why I'm not just putting a parentheses around this and multiplying by 3 is because I don't want you to forget you're multiplying the first term and the second term by 3. So just the most common mistake is to forget to multiply the y as well. Just be really careful and cautious with that. So we've got our equation in standard form, and we are ready for our summary. Okay, summarizing. When we have an a term that is negative, so when our very first term up here in the front is not positive, when it's negative, how do we change that? What do we multiply both sides of the equation by? Yeah, -1. So add this to your summary. We multiply everything by -1, and that's going to make that first term positive. What about when there's a decimal? We have to have all integers. So when there's a decimal, what did we multiply both sides of the equation by? Yeah, 10. Sure, 10 or 100 or 1,000, whatever we need to move those decimals. Then lastly, when there's a fraction, when we had a fraction, we had to make it a whole number. What did we multiply both sides of the equation by? Yeah, we multiplied by the denominator, absolutely. Keep in mind, though, that you have to check to be sure if you can simplify. So when you're done multiplying both sides of the equation by whatever you are multiplying by, be sure you check to see if anything can be simplified. All right, there was examples 1 through 4. Thank you so much for joining me. You'll want to watch the next lesson video for the following examples in the lesson.